K24, K20 hit. We are going to be doing the TracTuff clay kit. So stock cams, Type R cams, well, we've got 12.5 to 1 Y-scope pistons in there, and we need to check that our valves aren't going to touch them. That's basically it. We need to check, test, see how far under full cam advance and full VTEC, like when it is in the VTEC lobe. We need to check that our valves aren't going to punch on with the old pistons. You can see that they do protrude quite considerably, well, maybe not considerably in comparison to some other builds, but for a K, they stick out a bit. So what we need to do is, we need to check it, and the only way to do that is, well, there's actually another way you can do this, a little bit easier, I would say, but this is my preferred method. We're going to clay it. So what that entails is, we're going to take the cylinder head, the head gasket, and we're going to put it on the motor. Pretty self-explanatory. What we're going to do is we're just going to run one valve, because there is no need to run the whole valve train. It puts load on the valve springs and everything like that, and it just makes it hard while you're cranking the motor. We're going to take 2 valve springs out, and we're going to replace them with keeper springs. So they're very, very soft. So we're going to rotate the motor. It's very light, and the reason that you want it to be light is so you can feel if the valve is touching the piston or if it's pressing very hard against the clay or Play-Doh that you use on the piston. So as we rotate the motor, obviously motor rotates, piston will go down, nope, and it's not going to come back up. And we go the other way. Piston's going to come up, valves are going to open, and what we want to see on the Play-Doh that we're going to put on here is we want to see how far the valve presses into the Play-Doh, and that's going to give our piston to valve clearance. So we have to set up all the timing as it would run, and then we just rotate the motor over a couple of times. We take the Play-Doh out and we measure it, see how thick it is. We advance the variable cam timing, the VCT gear, up to 40, maybe even 50 degrees. Probably just run with the 40 to start with, and then we'll go straight to the 50. And just see how close it does get. If it gets too close, and like our piston mean speed, we've got to calculate that into the equation as well. If it gets too close, we have to limit the variable cam timing gear. We have to mechanically limit this, because some ECUs, I believe, will sweep the VCT on startup, which means it will give it oil pressure and it will rotate it and bring it back real quick. And if it's not mechanically limited, there is a potential that it will sweep on startup and punch on with the piston. Not ideal, not good. And it's also good just in case someone gets into the ECU, or there's a fault with the ECU, a loose wire or something, and for some reason it does get full oil pressure and fully advances. If it's only electronically limited, it might advance past where we tell it. If they're, say we're at 9,000 RPM, might just be a little tweak of oil pressure too much, and we just want to limit the possibility of valve to piston contact. So that's the reason that we go through all this anyway. And I will walk you guys through TracTuff instructions, show you bit by bit how it's done, and let's get at it. And okay, first off, let that focus, shall we? We need to get all these bad boys off. So this is our cam assembly. I need to get a 10mm to get this guy off here. What we need to do, because essentially all we need, come on, give me that. Single-handed. Get these towers off. What we need to get down to are the basics. So we need all of our, actually no, all we need are the 2 front towers and a rear tower. So we need to set that up on the head. All we need is 2 of these followers. So 2 of these rocker arms here. So we'll run the frontmost and the VTEC lobe here. We'll run a lock pin through both, so it is on the VTEC lobe. What that means is, here's a good example of this one here. So this is our non-VTEC lobe. That's just our regular daily driving, very small, very subtle. This is our VTEC lobe. You notice it's a lot bigger, a lot more pronounced. What that means is it's going to push the valve into the cylinder head a lot more, like considerably more. So we need to lock it on there because that is our maximum. We want to see our maximums. We don't care about the rest, basically. We want to see it at maximum. So we'll be locking VTEC, and we need to take 2 valve springs out of the same corresponding rocker arm holes there. So the front 2 valves, we'll drop those. We will put keeper springs in, and yeah, I guess I'll get back to you once I've done that. Alright, so look at our VTEC locking pins. Now in the TracTuff kit, these particular ones are flat faced, so the others have a chamfer on them. They're like a tapered edge, whereas the locking pins, they don't. And what you do with these, nice and simple. So, done. That's it. So here, push that all the way up. Da-da-da. This is essentially our tower complete. Just like that. Find that these will only kind of go in a certain way and lock. And then with the cams on top, I mean, you don't necessarily need to run these ones, but to rid myself of the chance of that moving backwards and forwards, I will. Now, the thing is, if I run this, I'm going to have to remove that valve spring from that. And I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to try it without. Shouldn't have any back and forward motion, essentially. So do this, you back on there, you back in here, so we don't lose our place. Be wary, because a lot of this is spring loaded as well, and it will push and move and fly all over the place. And that is how you want your towers. So you just want the 2 front, 1 at the back. You don't want all of them, because that's just going to be a hell of a lot of mess to, play around with. And you notice we've got 2 of the rockers off. That's simply because we don't want to be working on more than 2 of the valves at a time. So we're only checking the front 2. Thus, we only have the front 2 rockers on, and the VTEC is locked. So this is the VTEC follower that follows your VTEC lobe, and we've locked it to the valve actuator. So with that done, we are going to move on to, now I've already cleaned the head gasket and we've got that on the block. We're cleaning the block face. I need to clean the face of the actual head itself. We need to pull out 2 of those valves, the front corresponding ones here, and put in keeper springs. So I'll do that next, and then once we're gone from that point, we'll chuck some clay in, and yeah, we'll proceed from there. Alright lads, we got some clay. Oh, that was easy. So, got some clay. Let's break it off, knead it. So, all we need is 2 little spots. Nice and kneaded. Roll it in a ball without rolling it into the massive cut in your hand. There, so this will be our intake side. It's a bit bigger. What we want to do is going to just give it a good squish. Just like that. Squishy boy. Chuck that one on top of the valve relief in your piston. Grab some more. This one you want to be slightly smaller. Well, it depends on which one you just done. If you've done a large one, intake side, small one, exhaust side, really depends. I'll flip you around in a second to show you anyway. So, knead her up. It's nice and soft. You want her in a nice ball, not a cone. Close enough, and then we just give her a good squish. Little disc there. Pull a little bit out of the one that I done first. A little bit smaller. There you go, beautiful. Right, so should look something like that. And that is what is going to give us our impression. So our valves are going to come down, they're going to press into this and squish it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut it, pull it out and measure it. So, good time to look for some WD-40. I'm not entirely sure where it's gone. I got degreaser, brake clean. There we go. That's nice. A little bit of WD-40 on top of the clay. I find helps it stick to the piston. Naturally it will stick to the piston, and then the WD-40 stops it from sticking to the valve and giving you kind of like a, I guess, a false result. So next we are going to pull this guy down into the cylinder like so. We're going to chuck our cylinder head on. Got everything timed. We got our cover off the VCT. This bad boy here, just watch when you do take it off that this doesn't spring out and fly across the workshop. Now that we've got that done, we will run it through a whole cycle locked. So there's a little, just pushed it in, there's a little pin in here, and you can pull it out to unlock the VCT, or you can leave it in locked. So we're going to leave it locked on VTEC Lobe. We'll run it through, see what kind of thickness we get of that clay. And then go from there. Once that's done, we'll pull it all down and we'll start again. We'll go through, let's have a look. What have we got for pins? Alright, so we got this cover off from the VCT. We got this little bad boy out here. This usually locks it locks the VCT back in when there's no oil pressure. You can see there, that little pin in here will actually lock it. An example, makes it one piece, means you can't move it, locks it in place. Oil pressure pushes that out and allows it to move and slide around and whatnot. So firstly, we are going to run it through two full rotations. We're going to pull the clay, we're going to see what it is without any advancement on the intake cam, and then once that's done, we will chuck in, probably start with the 30, and then we'll just jump to the 40, and then 50 degrees advanced cam timing. So you get 3 pins with this: 30, 35 and 40. This motor isn't too crazy, it's just high compression pistons and type R cams, so the likelihood of us running into an issue with valve to piston clearance is very, very minimal, unless the head and the block has been skimmed multiple times. Probably not going to have a problem, but I just like to check anyway. So yeah, what we'll do, we'll run this through, we'll check it, and then we'll chuck in the 40, we'll check that, and then we'll just lock it full advance, which is our 50 degrees, and see what kind of measurements we get out of that. So what we want to do is rotate it twice, 2 full turns, and not with that thing. Use this guy. Gonna make sure that there's no excess pressure from the cams pushing the valve into the clay as well. As you can see, there's absolutely no issue with piston to valve clearance without any VTC or VCT advance. It's barely even touched. This one hasn't actually touched. So take that off, re-knead it, and then do it again. Alright, so with the cam gear fully retarded, 25, I think it was like 25 degrees is full sweep. I think in that lock position that must be negative 25 degrees advancement. We had absolutely no issue whatsoever with piston to valve contact. So now we're going to run up to I'm going to say the 40. What did I write down? 35. So we got 0, which is actually minus 25 degrees in full retardation. We're going to go up to 35, and then we're going to fully lock it. So the next one will be our 35 degrees. Beautiful. So we have our middle size, which is our 35 degree advanced VCT lock pin in there. And we also have this other pin in the back side of it here, and that is just to stop spring back, just in case it flicks back and wants to kind of push the valve down into our piston when we don't want it to. You do need to run these just to be sure. It also says in the instructions, don't do this without that kind of retainer pin there, I guess you'd call it. We've got our timing, everything is timed back up, we've got our marks and everything lined up, and yeah, let's go through it again. We're just going to rotate the motor through twice and check and see how much piston to valve clearance we actually have. And in classic fashion, run out of memory card space as soon as I start rotating the motor. Right, let's get back to that. Rotating twice, see what kind of clearance we got. Alright. So, as you kind of suspected, you might note as well your lash. You should have 0 valve lash. You just crack the 10mm, tighten it down, and boom, no valve lash. but it's not going to make a heck of a lot of difference anyway. You can see here we've had a very slight amount of contact on the intake side. And this bad boy across all the way around there. That's our pocket of the valve itself. You can kind of see it's made an impression on the shape, whereas the exhaust side, well, good. Doesn't look like it's quite touched it. A little bit of a kiss on the side there, and that's it. So that is looking good. I'll cut this one in half. We'll measure the smallest spot there with my calipers, and that is going to be us measuring 35 degrees advance VCT. Yeah, top dead center. So let's have a look. Trusty blade. All you want to do is very carefully find the center. I'm going to do this without deforming clay as well. And what you can see is that little piece there, that little dip. That is the lowest point of the valve, and that's what we want to measure. You want to take your calipers like so, and well, measure it. So, loosen this bad boy off, and very gently. There we go. 0.1765. So, we're good. Write that down. Smooth this thing together. Redo it. Alright, so we got a good result out of that. That's full advance. Like I was saying, with these pistons and a stock head, it's not going to be crazy. It's not going to be really tight. Even in the higher RPM range, it looks like we are going to be quite safe. So I'll cut it, I'll measure that, we'll write our numbers down, and then yeah, we'll go from there. The information we get from that is we can send it, basically. We're not going to have any issues with RPM limits or anything like that. That is a very good, very nice gap for us. So even at full advance at high RPM, which you're probably not going to see anyway, we're safe, we're good. But it would have been a guessing game if we had done it with these pistons and the block skimmed and the head skimmed. It would have just been a guessing game if we hadn't have done it. So obviously at 0 or minus 25 degrees VCT, nothing, no contact, nothing. And you notice there's no exhaust numbers here either. So we're so safe that the exhaust didn't even come close. I could have used more clay, kind of built it up to get a measurement out of the exhaust side, but I'm not concerned at all with the exhaust on these particular cams. And yeah, looks like we're good to go. Right, now we're done, and we have this monstrosity of a mess, but our motor is good to go. We are good to assemble the motor. With these numbers, we are fully safe. We're set, we're done, we're dusted. These are the numbers that I use for minimums as well, if you guys were wondering. That is, if it's any tighter than that, then I would consider either a new block or a new head that has not been skimmed, like a virgin one, or like the most common thing that you do is run a thicker head gasket, which yeah, it gets the job done. If you were very close to that, say you were in the hundreds, you'd probably just use a thicker gasket. If you're below that, you would consider a different block or a different head, or even machining your pistons, because that's getting real close, especially when you're talking performance. you got to take into account the heat, the stretch, your piston mean speed, which is how fast it travels up and down, your rod stretch, all of that comes into play. Yeah, but if you get close to those numbers, you probably know all that anyway, and you're probably ready to party. So this motor's safe, we're good to go. I'm going to keep going on and assembling it. I'm going to clean all of this stuff down again and get the head reassembled. Obviously get these bad boys out of here because they're not really good to anyone. Probably more like a D series valve spring if anything. But anyway, I'll get the head back together, and yeah, thank you TracTuff for this claying kit. They came, like the whole kit just came perfect. Like I'll be able to reuse that if I put it in a small bag to seal it up. You've got your 30, 35 and 40 degree pins. So you got 3 choices on your pins. You can also buy pins independently that are 2 degree increments if you need to mechanically lock it, or if, like for instance, those drag tail cams, I'll be starting at a small, maybe 15 degrees advanced on the intake cam and working my way up, claying the motor to work out just how close we can get, how close to those numbers I can get before I need to mechanically lock it, because big cams, big pistons, it's going to be a bad time if they touch. But yeah, this kit came complete, came with a small card for both the pins and for the clay kit, just describing what comes in the kit and how to use it. There are also very, very good instructions online, a full walkthrough on how to clay your motor, well, just like that really. And yeah, so thanks to those guys for chucking that together, fucking fantastic. And that's it from me. Our motor's clayed, we're good to go. Next video, going to be assembling the head, chucking it on the block, probably actually get the final motor assembly done. Ooh, actually before I forget, don't forget to redo your valve lash, because we're on 0 valve lash, no valve lash, nothing. You don't want to run your car without that. Good practice is anyway, because you have it all apart, is when you reassemble it, run through the whole lot and do your valve lash again on a nice cool morning, and you should be set. But yeah, that's it from me. Catch you on the next one. Peace.